workforce strategy as we typically do. Just so that we always do that kind of grounding to make sure everyone's on board. Many of you have heard it several times before, but we'll do it again. And then we've got a lineup of Otter Tail County speakers today. So Leah Jesser from Public Health is going to join us, and she's going to kind of walk through and give us an introduction to the Thrive initiative, which is all kind of focused on mental well-being and especially with an employer kind of lens to that. So there's some tools and activities that program and initiative has. So she'll walk through some of that. I will kind of do an overview of some workforce navigation services. So the county recently did kind of a gap analysis of the whole landscape of lots of our workforce partners that are on the call today. And we'll just kind of share some of the learnings from that analysis as far as workforce navigation services go. And then Laurie Sanders, who is in our Human Services Department, will end us off kind of talking about engaging with individuals with disabilities in the workforce and kind of some best practices and how to get connected to that if that's something as employers that you are all interested in. Each of those will do 10 to 15 minutes as usual, and then we've got some time at the end for Q&A and discussion. So with that, just to kind of get us started, as we always do, so OTC Works is the county's workforce strategy. OTC obviously standing for Otter Tail County, but also stands for Opportunities, Training, and Connection. And each of those kind of three key areas have an action to go with that. So promoting the availability of jobs and those opportunities with family sustaining wages. And then also some of the workforce resources throughout the county is kind of that first action area. Second one being really focusing on training and helping our employers to promote their opportunities and then recruit and retain workers in the most effective way they can. And then kind of the third and probably biggest area of the work that the county does is building those connections and creating partnerships, looking at occupational readiness, reducing some of those barriers to employment for folks who want to be in the workforce. And then also looking at our future workforce needs and those skills there. So that's a good overview, again, as we always do. And with that, Leah Jesser, like I said, is going to kind of be our opportunities speaker today. So I'll turn it over to her to kind of walk through all things Thrive initiative. So Leah, thanks for being on today.
Thank you, Sarah. And can you hear me with thumbs up if you can hear me?
Sounds good.
Great.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you all for joining today. Again, I'm here to just briefly talk about one of the programs that I coordinate out of the public health department here at the county, and that is called Thrive. Sarah, if you want to go to the next slide. So what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to briefly talk about what the program is. I don't have a lot of time to go through in specifics, but I do have some resources that you're more than welcome to reference at the end of the presentation. I do want to mention that if you have had a chance to use any of the Thrive practices or tools, I think it would be really cool to see them in the chat just to share your experience with them. So if you have, please share them, or if you have any questions or anything, please share them in the chat as well. So just again, briefly, Thrive is a mental well-being program. And really the aim of this program is to promote health through happiness and meaning. And we do this by essentially doing these practices that are based on these 5 mental health resilience tools. Go to the next slide, Sarah. So, why are we promoting this program? We recognize that mental well-being is very important for all of us. And there's been a big push to have mental health included and incorporated into all the work that we're doing. And so this program is just one program or tool that you can use to improve mental well-being among your employees or even in your personal life. Really, we're hoping to have this kind of broadly shared so that people can improve their mental well-being no matter where they're at. So essentially Thrive uses these evidence-based strategies, which means that they're rooted in the scientific research, and these strategies have been shown to improve mental well-being among those who do the practices regularly. And so on the right side there, I just have some examples of what regular practice can do for you and what it's been shown to do in some of these scientific studies. And that includes decreasing symptoms of depression and anxiety, enhancing your immune system, increasing energy and happiness, improving your ability to cope, among many other things. If anyone is interested in really looking at the research, I do have some of the studies available that I can send to you, and I'm more than happy to have conversations with you about it if you're interested. Next slide, Sarah. So the program is developed using this PERMA Plus framework, which is essentially this framework that says all of these aspects of the PERMA Plus framework together improve mental well-being. And so each of the letters stands for something. So P stands for positive emotions, so developing those feelings of contentment and joy. E stands for engagement, so being absorbed, interested, and involved in an activity. R stands for relationships, so feeling loved, supported, and valued by others. M stands for meaning, so having a sense of purpose, feeling life is valuable and worth living. A, accomplishment, so working towards reaching goals, feelings of mastery and achievement. And then that plus sign is just adding in some of those other health aspects, so physical activity, nutrition, adequate sleep into everyday life. Next slide, Sarah. So these are really some of the key concepts that the Thrive tries to target through the program. And so the first one there is flourishing. So that just means, to succeed and thrive. It's a state where people experience those PERMA plus concepts most of the time in their life. That second one there, mindset matters. This is the ability for individuals to believe that they can make a change when they experience delays or setbacks, and that kind of gets into that coping strategies and building that resilience. Accomplishment. So this is these little achievements that can build your capacity to be successful and build self-esteem. Meaning and purpose. Better things can happen when we take the focus off ourselves and put it on others. So our brain kind of gets a rush of helpful chemicals when we're actively taking the focus off ourselves and putting it on others. And then that last one there, happiness, which is just positive emotions we have related to enjoyable activities that we do in our daily life. Next slide, Sarah. So I've shared a lot of the background, and now this is the fun stuff here. Not to say the background's not fun, but this is the fun stuff here for the program. And these are the 5 tools that we recommend people do. The first one there is expressing gratitude. The second one is random acts of kindness. The third is social connections. The fourth one there is finding your flow. And the fifth is values. And Sarah, if you want to go to the next slide. I don't have time, like I mentioned, to go through each of those, but I do have additional resources on the webpage that I invite you all to look at. And then I think the next slide shows that, but there we go. Thank you, Sarah. So the web page, I think the easiest way to get to it would to go to ottertailcounty.gov, and then in that search bar to search for Thrive. And then we have a lot of information on there, including presentations for each of the tools. We have worksite activity examples. I have resources. I have videos. A lot of different stuff that you can look at to try to implement in your own environments. Next slide, Sarah. This is, again, a toolkit. This is available on the website, but this really just kind of goes into more depth about what the program is and what you could do in your environment to implement the program. Next slide. You can go to the next slide. And then one thing I did want to mention is that we are actively doing some more outreach to try to get people to be more knowledgeable about the program and to hopefully use it to improve their mental well-being. And so one of the things that we're doing is sending some social media toolkits. And I believe Sarah will send out this social media toolkit that I developed. And really, this just has some simple messages around mental health and well-being that encourages people that read your posts to use to improve their own mental well-being. And so I really encourage everyone to share these on your platforms if you're able. We will have a series of about 3 more that'll come out over the next year. Next slide, Sarah. So again, I am more than happy to meet with you separately if you're interested in learning more about this Thrive program. I can go into more depth about the program and maybe help you plan some activities if you're interested in implementing that. I have my contact information there for you. And again, if you have questions right now, I'm happy to take them. But that is all I have.
Thanks, Leah. Maybe just a quick question to give some context to it. Like, so I know you and I chatted kind of separately, but um, for employers who are interested in, in the mental well-being of their employees and really want to try to build something out, um, some of the things that Thrive has done is build out those toolkits and those resources and things like that. So employers don't have to start from scratch, right? Can you kind of talk through maybe even one of those examples? Like, is it a challenge that you do at work? Is it an activity that you and your coworkers do? That sort of thing?
Yes, yes. So the program itself has built out a lot of resources for everyone in various environments, including schools and work sites. Again, if you go to the web page, the Thrive web page, I'm just kind of navigating there right now. I do have something under creative materials that's called worksite activities, and then there are worksite practice examples that you can download there. And some examples of other places, of what other places have done is they've created maybe like a random acts of kindness challenge where over the month they've encouraged their staff to do a random act of kindness at least once a week, and then they would all share it on like a Slack channel or a Teams channel of what they did, and whoever had like the most random acts of kindness throughout that month won like a prize. Gratitude, we had an example of two staff members made a display on a wall in a common area, and everyone was asked to write a note of gratitude on a sticky note and stick it on that display. You could also do a simple gratitude activity by just like sending a gratitude email to someone or one of your employees, just thanking them for their work and letting them know that you are grateful for them. And it really makes, in my experience, it makes me feel appreciated and it makes the other people feel appreciated as well. Um, and then just general like social connections ones, we've had let's see, hosting like a work brunch potluck or an after work supper potluck, anything that you can do to get people to kind of connect with each other again in meaningful ways would be awesome. And again, this program is meant to be adapted. And so if you have activities that you think would be really fun to do that are related to the program, I encourage you to just be thoughtful and intentional in doing those activities in with the effort of improving well-being among your employees.
Yeah, and or excuse me, Leah, you can be a resource too for employers who are like, I don't know where to start. I know I have the tools, but I want to adapt. How do I do that? You can be a resource for that as well, right?
Yep, absolutely. I'm happy to talk to anyone that is interested in it or needs some help navigating any type of mental well-being initiative.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think taking it back to the bigger picture, I know we've had lots of conversations about retention and kind of building that culture of being welcoming and being that employer of, recognizing the whole employee, and mental health is a big piece of that. And I know public health has shared a lot of that here. Just, it kind of came up through the pandemic more and more. Um, but I think putting that focus on mental health and having the resources to be able to do that. So like I said, employers, you don't have to build from scratch, and knowing that Leah and public health are both a resource for that. So thank you, Leah, for reminding us of that and creating those resources for employers to be able to do that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And again, if anyone has any questions or wants to meet with me, please reach out. I am more than happy to talk with you. I like talking about this. So
Yeah. Any questions for Leah before we move on to our next topic? Feel free to also engage, like she said, mention things in the chat that if you have ideas or questions for her, feel free to engage in the chat as well. If not, we'll move on. So I'm gonna kind of share as far as the next action area goes, that's training, and that really again, like I said, is focused on helping employers recruit and retain more effectively. And so one of those pieces that has kind of come to the forefront is workforce navigation services. And we've done kind of a lot of this work focused on youth with our youth workforce navigation program that Amy Johnson kind of leads, and exploring a lot of that and where are the gaps with our youth workforce and with our schools. And we just kind of identified, we should be doing some of this work when it comes to the adult population and some of those individuals with barriers to employment as well. And so the county did, kind of like I mentioned, a gap analysis, just looking at the landscape of everyone, or not everyone, but many of the major players when it comes to workforce navigation. And kind of what we came to the realization of through this gap analysis is there's kind of four main categories that you can break down workforce navigation services into. And this wasn't our own idea. This was kind of adapted from a couple other examples of workforce development groups, but just kind of wanted to take a little bit of time to walk through these four categories so that employers who maybe aren't as familiar with some of the services that are out there, that they can start to categorize what is out there and how they can tap into that and leverage that. So just kind of starting at on the left side top there, with education and training. So I think this one is probably one of the more obvious ones, I would say, in that it really focuses on equipping the labor force with the knowledge and skills that they need, right? It's learning how to do the things that are required to be a CNA. It's the things that you need to know to learn how to weld. And kind of some of the partners that come to mind right off the bat with that are, M-State and their Workforce Development Solutions group. And obviously our school districts play a major role in that. And then employers too play a big piece of that with some of their on-the-job training. So that's kind of the first circle. If you move to the right with employer services, this is kind of more focused on direct work with employers, and connecting them with those potential workers, excuse me, and kind of looking at how they can address some of those barriers with employers, or just educating those employers on what they can do. That sometimes can look like a job coach being there for an employer to support an employee that they have, or being a go-between to set up interviews. It's kind of those direct connections, and some of the examples as far as agencies or organizations go would be like a productive alternatives. They are providing that job coach when it comes to individuals with disabilities. And I won't talk too much about that because Laurie's gonna kind of dive into that here later on. But then thinking about where those two categories intersect or cross over, and you have to kind of turn your head to see it, but you get a talent pipeline there of people with the right skills, and then employers with a pipeline to pull from, so that you have a group of people that are applying to your job openings and interested in kind of being involved in your opportunities. If we move down to career services, so these are kind of similar and mirrored, but career services is more direct with those job seekers and maybe connecting them to work opportunities. It could include things like career exploration. It could be, help through a hiring process, and that sort of thing. So typical partners that might come to mind with that are like rural Minnesota SEP and our career force office. Or offices throughout Otter Tail County. And then looking at where those two intersect, so the employer services and the career services, where those cross, you get employers with potential workers that are connected to, or excuse me, partners with the potential workers that are connecting to employers. And then they can kind of get into that recruitment and placement process. So that's that crossover there is really getting into the meat of how do we get them started. If you move over then to community resources, that blue circle, this kind of looks at like providers and partners that are more outside of the traditional work related services, I would say. It could be providers that are focused on soft skills training. It could be folks who are trying to address childcare barriers or housing barriers. looking at transportation needs for those employees, even things like recovery and mental health services, all of that sorts of things. So it's more the whole community or whole person rather than just those job focused skills and resources. But when you cross those community resources with the career services, then you have, job seekers or the potential workforce that knows where and how to look for a job and then also feels like their needs are being met to be able to show up at work. So some of those wraparound supports are there as well, and they know how to, and where to tap into those. And then to kind of close the loop where the education and training crosses over with community resources, then you have you can see career readiness. You have a ready workforce that has the, not only the technical skills, the technical knowledge, but also those soft skills. And then they also feel equipped with that wraparound support, so that they are, able to fully show up for work and be fully employed. And then I didn't add in the middle of the circle there, but kind of where all four of those overlap, really is then a strengthened workforce for Otter Tail County. And at the end of the day, that's really the goal of OTC Works and of our workforce strategy. So this is kind of, it looks very complicated, but I think this has helped us to kind of break down the services that are out there and categorize those. And then also what we did with that gap analysis was we talked to, this isn't an exhaustive list, but we did talk to, 20 plus partner agencies to really build an understanding of what categories they fit into. So for example, like we talked to Mojave Atwa, so that and their kind of answer was they fit into all four of those categories. They do a little bit of each of those, a little bit of everything, in different ways. And then we talked to like our internal human services teams on what they do and how they refer to other organizations. And they said, we really help with kind of the wraparound community resources. And then in some cases, we also help with some of those direct job seekers for folks that are in our case management services that we, help them with some of the career services. And we asked, Lakeland Mental Health, where do you fit in? And they said we fit into kind of one category, and that's really the, looking at a more narrow population, but serving them at a deeper level with some of those community resources. So like I said, this is not an exhaustive list. There are for sure people and partners that are missing here.
Benefits.
But it is a really great representation of kind of the categorization of how many partners there are, and then also what they're involved in. And hopefully this starts to kind of build an understanding of how employers can engage with some of those partners and the services they provide. Taking an even deeper dive and looking even more specifically, several of those partner agencies have more narrow populations that they can or do serve. Like I said, some are a little bit more limited and focused. For example, Welcome House or Barber House, which is Fergus Falls is a nonprofit that provides transitional housing, but they are focused on women and individuals who are in, recovery or treatment programs or facing homelessness. So they really provide those community resources to that narrow population. And then some organizations are more broad, like you can see Rural Minnesota SEP has several populations listed there, and they don't have quite as narrow or as many limitations on who they serve. So again, this gives employers kind of an idea if they want to tap into a certain population, like if they want to focus on youth or if they want to focus on individuals with disabilities, that they start to identify the partners that they can become familiar with and who to build connections with as well. And then also wanted to provide, I think at our workforce summit was really focused on how do we talk about addressing workforce challenges in a solutions oriented way. So wanted to make sure I got to that here as well, that we don't just dump all of this information and then we don't know what to do with it. But really, that action piece is we want to look at some of those untapped labor pools and individuals with barriers to employment. And we had some, kind of high level introductory panels last fall at our workforce summit who offered some experiences in their time creating workplaces that are ready for veterans or ready for second chance workers or ready for youth. So we really looked at some of those different labor pools and kind of the basics of how to start or how to get involved in serving some of those or tapping into some of those. And then kind of our intention now with this additional information and kind of those additional categorization um, pieces of information, we kind of intend to do a little bit of a deeper dive into each of those labor pools and then maybe start to unpack how employers can take that action. So like for example here, I'm going to turn it over to Laurie Sanders in a minute, who is focused on individuals with disabilities, and she's a social worker in our human services department. At the county, and she can talk more specifically about engaging individuals with disabilities and some of those connections that employers can start to build to make that process of doing that engagement more simplified. So big picture, and this is kind of where the red arrow comes in. We're really hoping to go from providing employers with this information and kind of the education of what the landscape of workforce navigation services looks like, and then help go to the next level and start to build those connections and partnerships between all of those agencies and organizations that provide the services that employers can tap into. So, like I said, really high level, but hopefully starts to give folks on the call a little bit more of an idea of how many partners there are, and then an even better idea of where they can tap into some of those partners. So with that, I'll pause for any questions. Otherwise, if there aren't any, I'm gonna let Laurie take over here, and like I said, kind of do a deeper dive into one of those focused labor pools, and that's individuals with disabilities. So if there aren't any questions, I'll let you take it away, Laurie.
Okay, good morning. As Sarah said, I'm Laurie Sanders, and I am the lead social worker in our disabilities unit, which really means that I help manage the Medicaid waivers that provide funding for assisting people in accessing jobs in the community. So we work with what, I don't know if you're real familiar with it or not, but the Minnesota Employment First policies. And what those policies did was raise the expectation that all individuals of working age with disabilities in Minnesota who want to work should be able to work competitively in an integrated community setting. And that's the higher level of the verbiage of what we want to see for everyone. But I'm amazed by listening to Leah's presentation about Thrive and how really that's what we're asking for people with disabilities, that they too can thrive in that environment. They have all those same needs. You think about meeting someone new, going to a family reunion, a class reunion, whatever you might go to. And one of the first questions you're going to hear is, what do you do? And we want them to have an answer. We want them to also have that fulfillment in their life and be able to answer that question. So I'm going to start today with a video that actually comes out of Virginia, but does a really good job of looking at the priority that we have set for our work too, as far as looking at what do people want to do, when do they want to work, how much do they want to work, and what's the right work setting for somebody, because everyone deserves to work in the right setting with the right supports to make that work for them. So Sarah, if you want to go ahead and start the video. I just want to say it comes out of Virginia and they talk about DARS, and you can probably substitute productive alternatives in there when they're talking about DARS, because it's pretty much the same type of a setting.
Sure. All right, Laurie, let me know. I think I have the audio working, but someone can give me a thumbs up if everything looks good and sounds good.
Good to me.
There were certain hours a day where we needed some extra hands. So then we were approached by DARS, and we worked together with them to carve out pieces of the jobs of people that we already had in the clinic, but needed extra help with. For instance, flipping rooms. We see a patient, and then the room is sanitized after we see that patient, and then a new patient is loaded. Well, we needed help with that, but it wasn't enough hours in the day for a full-time person. So we went to DARS and we said, this is what we're looking for, people with these kinds of skills. And then they would bring people out, we'd work with them and see what, where their skills lie. And then we would start carving out pieces of the jobs.
They are not our special needs employees. They are my employees. They are held to a standard.
When I first started working here, I would always ask a lot because I would get lost or confused on where stuff went if I did something on my own, and I would have a job coach with me to help me out through it. I sweep them up in here. I fill up the cat litter box so it'll be ready for when they need it. I walk the dogs. I help walk the dogs in the morning.
Because even outside of work, I got confidence saying that the clinic is so clean and floors are always shiny.
Right now, hospital clean is the key word for Darren, so he does his thing and he comes back and he says, all right, is this hospital clean? And I look at it like, well, almost. This needs to be done, that needs to be done. And then there it is, it's hospital clean.
He has been changed from, part-time, very, very part-time. He's almost full-time right now. When you ask him what days he wants to work, he's willing to work 7 days a week.
Yeah, my project coach helped me a lot.
Checkup list right here, so that way I make sure that everything is in the right order and that I don't miss anything.
Ashton originally hired to wrap surgical packs. That was it. Then she was wrapping quicker, and boy, you can tell the ones she's wrapped because they are tight. They are precise. She does precision work in it. They're never wrong.
Job coach, when I first started working here, helped me with paying attention to detail and showing me little spots that can be worked on more.
When I first started, the job coach was always with me, making sure that I was doing okay and that if I got stressed out, she would be there.
They're never late. They actually have pretty much perfect attendance.
First job ever, and I kept it this long, so.
Working here, actually, it makes me feel included, and I'll always prefer to be here than at home sometime. I love being around animals. It's I'm excited to come into work, and I love it.
Yeah, I love it. It's like one big happy family here.
Hiring these young adults, though, has had a separate benefit for my clinic, and that is it has greatly increased morale.
Okay, so can you hear me now, Sarah? Yeah.
Yep, you're good.
That it really does a good job of pointing out what their real values are. They want to work, they can be competitively employed. Rarely do we find situations where they work full-time. They pick up some hours that maybe are not the favorite hours of everyone else. But they will pick up those hours. They'll bring a job coach with that can take a lot of load off of the employer because we have someone with them that makes sure the job gets done at the same time as that person is experiencing a chance of being included in a community work site. And what they were saying, one of the real things, one of the real big points that we make is that if it's not the right situation for the employer and the employee, it's not the right situation. So they get job trials. We start with the engage process and we talk about what are they interested in. We talk about how work will benefit how that will affect their benefits and make sure that people understand those things and that they want to work. And then we go from there to what places they'd like to work, what types of work they'd like to do, give them some experiences. in those settings. And then hopefully we get to the point where we're saying, well, we're ready. Let's develop a job for you. Let's find that. Then often we will make referrals to the Department of Economic and Employment Services, as they will fund that placement. And well, they generally still will work with Productive Alternatives or Trans M to provide the staff that do those jobs. So then once the placement's found and it's considered stable, which, you know, there's a long definition to why is that stable. They're there, they enjoy it, the employer's satisfied, the employee's satisfied, and they're able to meet the goals of doing their job with maybe not constant supports, but with some checks. And once it's stable, then the deed department will send it back to Otter Tail County, asking that we will do the wraparound service and continue to fund the job coach to maintain that employment. So it's just a work in progress every single day with every single person that we see. But hopefully we will find more and more more and more employers who are interested in working with people with a disability. You know, you can find the right person who's qualified for the job, and if they have a disability, then we look for providing those supports that help them to be successful in it. So this, with the slide that you're seeing now, shows the contacts for people at Voc Rehab or DEED. They will, you know, they'll be contacting, looking for jobs. So if as an employer you are interested in working with this population, you also could reach out to Eric. Productive Alternatives also does placements and job searches. So any employers interested could speak to them. And then you can always come in and you can always reach out to us here at Otter Tail County, and we'll help you find that contact that you want within an agency to work with people with disabilities. I don't have a lot more to say other than that again, I want to just reiterate that the things we hear about the employees, the clients I work with, is that they're reliable, they're accountable, they want to be there. They get the supports they need, and they make the workplace a happy place because they're so happy to be there. So we can connect you up with employers who we do work with if you're interested, that can tell you about their experience. So just reach out, I guess, is where I'm coming from if you've got that interest.
Yeah, thanks, Laurie. And I think sometimes it's just asking the question of our employers, because there's probably folks out there who, you know, I'll do it, I just need the support to do it, or I need to kind of take those first steps, and someone to help me take those first steps is really where, you know, any of the three folks listed here and always Otter Tail County are happy to make those connections and get you started in those first steps. So there are absolutely the people out there that want to work. There's just the supports that go along with that to help it make it simple for employers. So, right. Anything else to add, Laurie, or questions for Laurie on the topic?
We never have enough employers. I'll add that. So if anyone's interested, we're ready to try to help you get down that route.
Yeah, awesome. All right. With that, then we'll open it up to questions for any of our speakers if anything has kind of come up in your time listening. And as always, we've got contact information for all of our folks. Like I said, it was a full Otter Tail County lineup today, so hopefully easy to remember as far as email goes. But like we've said, happy to always make connections if you lose emails and want to be put in touch with the right person. So we're happy to make that connection for anyone. Questions, comments on any of our topics today for any of our speakers? Otherwise, we'll end early today. We'll give you 20 minutes back. It's a shorter one. Thank you, Amy Hochgraber, for adding in the chat too. Amy put a plug in for M-State's mental health first aid training, so kind of related to Leah's topics, but some training available through M-State to also do some of that groundwork, legwork with employee mental well-being. So thanks for that, Amy H. All right. Well, if we don't have any questions, we'll end early. We'll give you 20 minutes back. But thank you everyone as always for joining us this quarter, and we'll see you next quarter.
Thanks everyone. Take care.
Hey gals, could you guys stay on for just a sec?
Hi, Dustin. Yeah, we're happy to stay on. I'm going to stop the recording here. Give me 1 sec.